Hello. I'm Helena, 28 years old, and even though I run a tech company worth millions, I still take the bus to work. My parents have never really understood why I choose to live simply, especially when I show up to our family dinners in jeans while my cousins flaunt their designer clothes. When Blake jokingly asked if I was still using public transport, I was surprised to see my antique watch catch my dad's attention. The expression on his face changed everything that evening. If you're watching this, please leave a comment about where you're from. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to find out how I managed to silence a room full of relatives obsessed with status with just a flick of my wrist. Growing up as the daughter of Thomas and Eleanor Hayes meant I attended prestigious private schools, vacationed in the Hamptons, and had every material advantage a child could wish for. My father built his real estate empire from the ground up, transforming a small inheritance into a fortune through hard work and business acumen. My mother came from a wealthy background, with her family name gracing buildings all over Manhattan. They gave me every opportunity, but they also taught me the value of forging my own path in life. Unlike my cousins, who were happy to rely on family wealth and connections, I was determined to create something meaningful on my own terms. After graduating from Harvard Business School, I shocked everyone by turning down a six-figure job offer at my father's company. Instead, I took an entry-level role at a struggling tech startup. My father was puzzled but supportive, while my mother was heartbroken, convinced I was wasting my potential. My cousins, especially Blake, thought I had lost my mind. "You could be driving a Porsche by next year if you worked for Uncle Thomas," Blake said when I shared my decision. "Instead, you'll be making coffee for some nerds who will likely go bankrupt in 6 months." I simply smiled and told him that there are more important things in life than driving a Porsche. He gazed at me as if I had spoken in a foreign tongue. The startup was everything I had dreamed of. It was fast-paced, innovative, and filled with brilliant minds collaborating to create something groundbreaking. I flourished in that atmosphere, quickly advancing to the position of product manager within 18 months. That's where I met Victor, a 65-year-old seasoned entrepreneur who acted as our company advisor. Victor became the mentor I desperately needed. While my father had educated me about business in theory, Victor demonstrated its practical application in the tech industry. He was intelligent, kind, and completely unfazed by status symbols, despite his vast wealth. He drove a decade-old Toyota, wore the same 3 sweaters on repeat, and resided in a humble home. Nevertheless, he had established 3 unicorn startups and was highly regarded throughout Silicon Valley. "True wealth is invisible," he once told me. "The moment you need to show people how successful you are, you have already failed at understanding what success means." I absorbed his philosophy like a sponge. When our startup was acquired by a tech giant 2 years later, I utilized my buyout funds to launch my own company, Klein Dynamics, naming it in honor of Victor. He was moved by the gesture and became my first investor and board member. The initial 2 years were grueling. I worked 18-hour days, lived in a tiny studio apartment, and reinvested every penny back into the company. I created a platform that enabled small businesses to compete with corporate giants through data analysis and targeted marketing strategies. The potential was immense, but the early days were riddled with challenges, failed pitches, and dwindling resources. Throughout it all, Victor remained by my side. When other investors became anxious, he stayed composed. When I questioned my abilities, he reminded me of my vision. And when I was on the verge of giving up, he showed up at my apartment with takeout and shared stories of his own early failures. On my 17th birthday, after a particularly challenging quarter that still showed encouraging metrics, Victor gifted me a small box. "This has accompanied me through 3 companies, 2 market downturns, and 1 very public failure," he remarked. "Now it should belong to you." Inside was his watch. It wasn't flashy or overtly expensive, but it exuded elegance in its simplicity. A Victor original from the limited collection he crafted as a side project before gaining fame in tech. I recognized it instantly from articles I had read about him, yet I was unaware of its true worth. "Victor, I can't accept this," I objected. "This is worth more than my company," he chuckled. "Right now, maybe, but not for long," he said as he fastened it around my wrist. "Promise me you'll wear it when you need to remember your value, not what others perceive it to be." 3 months later, Victor unexpectedly passed away from a heart attack. I was heartbroken. The watch became my most cherished possession, not for its financial worth, but because it linked me to him. I wore it daily as I steered the company through its growth phase without his support. In the years following his death, client dynamics had skyrocketed. We landed major clients, expanded to 3 international offices, and were featured in every significant tech publication. I was named to the Forbes 30 Under 30 list, and acquisition offers began flooding in. Throughout it all, I upheld Victor's philosophy of understated success. I still resided in my modest apartment, although I had upgraded to a 1-bedroom. I continued to use public transportation and avoided the limelight whenever I could. My extended family remained largely oblivious to my achievements. They knew I had launched my own company, but I never talked about its growth during family gatherings, preferring to listen to my cousins brag about their latest acquisitions instead. My parents respected my privacy, though my father occasionally checked my company's public filings and seemed increasingly impressed by what he discovered. The yearly Hayes family dinner is a tradition that began with my grandparents and has been carried on by my father and his brother, my Uncle Henry. It takes place at my parents' estate in Connecticut, a grand mansion that has appeared in architectural publications. Each year, the whole extended family comes together to eat, drink, and inevitably discuss their accomplishments and possessions. Uncle Henry, my father's younger sibling, has always had a competitive relationship with him. While my father amassed his wealth through diligent work and calculated risks, Uncle Henry entered into wealth through marriage and leveraged his connections to secure a high-ranking role at a well-respected financial firm. Their children embody their parents' values. My cousins, led by Blake, gauge success by the brands they flaunt and the cars they drive. Family dinners have turned into displays of their latest status symbols. As I got ready for this year's dinner, I reflected on Victor and what he might say about my worries regarding facing my family. I could almost hear his soft laughter and his words of wisdom. Let them flaunt their Porsches. You are creating something enduring. With that thought, I chose my usual outfit, dark jeans, a plain white blouse, minimal makeup, and Victor's watch. I called an Uber and made my way to Connecticut, prepared to face another night of subtle and overt judgment. The Uber driver whistled softly as we drove through the ornate iron gates of my parents' estate. "Nice place," he remarked, steering along the long, winding driveway flanked by perfectly trimmed topiaries. I nodded, my eyes on the familiar Georgian mansion appearing in the distance, its limestone exterior shimmering in the early evening glow. Returning here always stirred a complex mix of feelings within me. I felt pride in what my parents had accomplished, nostalgia for my childhood, and a hint of discomfort with the extravagance. "You can drop me off at the front," I instructed the driver as we neared the circular driveway. A line of luxury cars was already parked in a prominent spot. I quickly noticed Blake's new Ferrari angled just right so that it couldn't be overlooked. Beside it stood Uncle Henry's Bentley, my cousin Amber's Range Rover, and a few other upscale vehicles belonging to different family members. My Uber, a sensible Toyota Camry, seemed quite out of place as it arrived at the grand entrance, complete with towering columns and large oak doors. I expressed my gratitude to the driver, tipped generously through the app, and stepped out into the crisp autumn air. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed some movement at one of the windows. Blake was observing my arrival, likely taking note of my choice of transport with a hint of smugness. Before I could ring the bell, the grand front door swung open, revealing Santos, my parents' longtime butler. His formal demeanor softened into a warm smile upon seeing me. "Miss Helena, welcome home," he greeted me kindly. "Your parents are in the main salon with the other guests." "Thank you, Santos," I replied, returning his smile. "How are Maria and the kids?" "Very well, thank you." Diego started college this fall, the first in the family. That's wonderful, I said, genuinely pleased. I had assisted Santos's son with his application essays last year. He's studying computer science. Yes, he often speaks of you. Your encouragement meant a lot to him. I gently squeezed his arm before moving past him into the grand entry hall, which featured marble floors and a sweeping staircase. The sounds of conversation and classical music floated from the salon. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and made my way toward the gathering. My mother was the first to spot me. Ella Laner Hayes was a striking woman in her early 60s, looking elegant in a navy blue designer dress that likely cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her silver-streaked dark hair was perfectly styled, and her posture was impeccable. She excused herself from a conversation with my aunt and glided toward me. "Helena, darling," she said, air-kissing both my cheeks. She took a step back, quickly evaluating my outfit with a brief look. "You could have chosen the Chanel dress I gifted you for your birthday. It would have suited tonight perfectly." "This is more comfortable, Mom," I replied, giving her a genuine hug. She returned it, albeit a bit stiffly. "You look beautiful as always," she said with a sigh, though a smile followed. "At least that blouse is made of silk. Come over and greet everyone. Your cousin Blake just landed a significant account at the firm." Naturally, he did. Blake's successes were always highlighted right away, while mine often went unnoticed. I trailed behind my mother into the salon, a magnificent room with high ceilings, antique furnishings, and walls adorned with priceless art. Around 20 family members were already present, gathered in small clusters, champagne flutes in hand. My father was deep in conversation with Uncle Henry by the fireplace, but he glanced up as I walked in. Thomas Hayes was tall and distinguished, his once dark hair now mostly gray. Unlike my mother, who fully embraced the luxuries of wealth, my father exhibited a certain restraint. Yes, he drove luxury cars and owned several homes, but there was always a hint of discomfort about him at these formal family events, as if he hadn't completely shed his middle-class roots. "There is my girl," he said, breaking away from his brother and crossing the room to give me a proper embrace. His hug was warm and sincere, carrying the familiar scent of the cologne he wore throughout my childhood. "How was the drive up?" "Fine, Dad." "No traffic," I replied. He nodded, scrutinizing my face closely. "You look tired, working too hard." "Probably," I conceded, "but things are going well." "Glad to hear it," he lowered his voice. "Your latest quarterly filing was impressive. That contract with Johnson & Williams was quite a win." I blinked in surprise. "You noticed that?" He smiled slightly. "I keep an eye on you, even if you think I don't." He squeezed my shoulder. "I am proud of you, Helena. You're building something on your own terms." Before I could say anything, Uncle Henry came over with a cocktail in hand. "Helena, there you are. We were starting to think you had forgotten about us successful people." His laugh was just a tad too loud, and his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Hello, Uncle Henry," I replied, accepting his quick hug. "How are things at Westfield Financial?" "Booming. Absolutely booming. We just acquired a boutique firm in Boston, adding $2 billion to our portfolio management." He took a big sip of his drink. "But enough about me. How is your little startup doing? Still afloat?" My father frowned slightly at his brother's condescending tone, but I just smiled. "We are managing. Thanks for asking." "Good. Good. Persistence is key." He patted my arm in a patronizing way. "Blake is around here somewhere. He was made junior partner last month, the youngest in the firm's history." "That is wonderful," I said with as much enthusiasm as I could muster. "I will be sure to congratulate him." As if summoned by his name, Blake appeared at his father's side. My cousin was 32, conventionally handsome in the way of men who spend too much time at exclusive gyms and high-end barbershops. His suit was clearly custom-made, and his watch was ostentatiously diamond-encrusted. "Cousin Helena," he said, air-kissing near my cheek. "Love the simple look. Very authentic." "Blake's," I responded with a nod. "Congratulations on making junior partner." He adjusted his already straight tie. "Thanks. The Ferrari outside is my celebration gift to myself. 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds. Impressive," I said, though I couldn't have cared less. Victor's watch suddenly felt heavy on my wrist, a reminder of what truly mattered. My cousin Amber approached next, her high heels clicking against the marble floor. "Helena, oh my God, it has been ages." She hugged me with the excessive enthusiasm of someone who has already had several glasses of champagne. "I love what you have done with your hair. So natural." Amber was Blake's younger sister, 26, and already on her second husband. She was nominally employed in public relations, but her role appeared to mainly consist of attending charity galas and sharing updates about them on social media. "Thanks, Amber. You look great." "Just returned from Capri," she replied, tossing her luxuriously highlighted hair. "Alejandro has a villa there. You should check it out. 6 bedrooms, an infinity pool, and private beach access." She leaned in closer. "We're considering purchasing our own place nearby. Nothing too extravagant, just a modest €3 million getaway." I nodded politely as she elaborated on the features of Italian luxury real estate. Over her shoulder, I noticed my other cousins engaged in similar discussions. Justin was flaunting his new Rolex to his sister Madison, who was busy scrolling through pictures of her recent Maldives trip on her phone. Aunt Pamela was telling my mother about her newly renovated house in the Hamptons, stressing the challenge of finding trustworthy contractors who appreciated the value of imported Italian marble. The entire room buzzed with these exchanges of acquisition and success, a familiar melody of competitive wealth. I stood amidst it all, wearing Victor's watch, contemplating the conference call I had scheduled for the next morning with a non-profit organization eager to use our platform to connect homeless individuals with job opportunities. The stark contrast between these two worlds made me feel as though I was navigating parallel universes. A staff member appeared to announce that dinner was ready, offering a much-appreciated interruption. As we headed toward the formal dining room, my father walked alongside me. "You seem quiet tonight," he remarked. "Just a bit tired," I answered. "The end of the quarter is always hectic." He nodded and then quietly added, "I read about your housing initiative in the Times business section, providing your platform to affordable housing advocates pro bono. That was kind of you." I looked at him in surprise. He seldom mentioned specific details about my work. "It felt like the right thing to do," I replied simply. A flicker of approval seemed to shine in his eyes. "Your grandfather would have reacted similarly. He always remembered his roots." He took a moment to pause. "I haven't forgotten either, regardless of what Henry may believe." Just as I was about to reply, we stepped into the dining room where a table set for 24 sparkled with crystal silverware and elegant china. Name cards showed our seating placements, and I wasn't surprised to find myself seated between Blake and Madison. Another family dinner was officially underway. The first course was served without delay. Seared scallops drizzled with a citrus reduction, beautifully arranged on white porcelain dishes. The family settled into their chairs, wine glasses were filled, and the show began. These dinners always followed a familiar pattern. Achievements would be mentioned in passing. Acquisitions would be subtly brought up. Status would be established and reinforced. "Madison, that necklace is gorgeous," Aunt Pamela remarked to my cousin across the table. "Is it new?" Madison gently touched the diamond pendant at her neck. "Oh, this?" "Yes, Thomas surprised me after he finalized the Peterson merger. It's a 12-carat cushion cut. We had it custom designed by that jeweler in the city, the one who works with all the celebrities." "How thoughtful," my mother replied. "Speaking of mergers, Henry, I heard Westfield is considering that firm in Chicago. Uncle Henry dabbed his mouth with his napkin before responding. Yes, negotiations are nearing completion. Blake has played a key role in the due diligence process. All eyes shifted to Blake, who wore a modest expression that seemed rehearsed, saying, "Just doing my job." But the acquisition will increase our annual revenue by about 30%. We're also looking to expand our presence in the Pacific Rim next. Uncle Henry continued, Blake has always had a knack for business. He gets that from me, of course. My father raised an eyebrow but chose to remain silent, sipping his wine instead. I was aware that he was reflecting on how Uncle Henry had almost driven his first investment firm to bankruptcy before he married into the Westfield family and secured a senior role at his father-in-law's company. "And Justin, dear, how is the new position at Goldman?" my mother inquired, shifting the focus to another cousin. Justin adjusted his tie, stating that it was both challenging and rewarding. "We just finalized a $4 billion deal with a Saudi investment group. I'll be flying to Riyadh next month on the company jet." The discussion flowed in this manner as the second course was served, roasted beet salad with goat cheese and candied walnuts. I sat quietly, answering direct questions but otherwise staying on the outskirts of the conversation. Blake, however, seemed intent on pulling me into the dialogue. "So, Helena," he said, swirling his pricey Bordeaux. "How is the entrepreneurial life treating you? Still working out of that co-working space downtown?" "Actually, we moved to our own offices last year," I responded, "in the Flatiron district." "Oh, that must be costly. Those rents are outrageous," he remarked. I nodded non-committally. "It works for us." "And how many employees do you have now?" he pressed. "Still just you and those 2 programmers," he noted. "We have expanded a bit." Blake shared a knowing glance with his father. "Well, startups are always a risk. 90% fail within the first year. The fact that you've lasted this long is quite impressive." "Thank you for the vote of confidence," I replied dryly. Aunt Pamela leaned in, her expression one of feigned concern. "Darling, you know, if you ever need assistance, the family is here for you. There's no shame in admitting when it's time to try something else. I'm sure your father could find a suitable position for you at Hayes Development." I felt a surge of irritation but maintained a neutral expression. "That's very kind, Aunt Pamela. But we are doing fine." "Of course, dear," she said, patting my hand in a manner that implied she didn't believe me. "I just have some concerns. A young woman ought to focus on stability and planning for the future. Take Madison, for instance. She and Thomas recently bought that beautiful brownstone in Brooklyn Heights." Madison was glowing with happiness. "The renovations are quite expensive, but it will definitely pay off. We are adding a wine cellar and a home theater. You should visit once it's all done, Helena. It might spark some inspiration for you." I managed a tight smile. "That sounds lovely." "You know," Uncle Roger interjected from further down the table. "Entrepreneurship is great, but there's definitely something to be said for the security that comes with an established company." My college roommate ventured into the startup world. He was a bright guy with what seemed like a solid idea. He invested every penny he had into it. Now, he's running a branch of Bank of America in New Jersey. Several family members nodded knowingly at this cautionary story. "I recall when you first mentioned starting your own business," Blake said, slicing into his perfectly cooked salmon as the main course was served. "What was it again?" "Some sort of data analysis for small businesses." "That's correct," I replied, taking a bite of my meal. "It seems like a limited market," he noted. "Small businesses typically don't have much budget for that kind of service. Now, if you were aiming for enterprise clients," he trailed off, shaking his head slightly. "We have a diverse client base," I stated simply. Blake wasn't discouraged. "I just have concerns about the long-term viability, especially in this economy." Venture capital has significantly decreased since interest rates rose. I thought about the $20 million in funding we secured last quarter and the offers from 3 major VC firms that I was currently evaluating. We managed just fine. My father cleared his throat. Helena's company is actually doing quite well. I've been impressed with their growth metrics. Blake looked taken aback but quickly regained his composure. Well, good for her. It's essential to pursue your passion, even if it requires some lifestyle changes. Madison immediately picked up on his tone. Absolutely, Helena, I truly admire your dedication to simplicity. It must feel so grounding to live like everyday people. I noticed my father watching me, his expression unreadable. My mother appeared uneasy, clearly caught between defending her daughter and preventing any sign of family discord at her carefully arranged dinner. I responded calmly, stating that there is dignity in living within one's means. This was something Victor always stressed. Victor? Uncle Henry inquired. Victor, I clarified. He was my mentor, and he passed away last year. Oh, the tech guy, Blake remarked dismissively. I read about him. Made a fortune in software or something, right? Lived like a pauper despite being worth billions. Quite eccentric. Hearing Victor described this way ignited a wave of anger within me, but I maintained my composure. He believed that true wealth should be measured by the impact one has, not by material possessions. Blake scoffed. Easy to say when you have billions in the bank. I bet he still flew private and owned homes all over the globe. Actually, he flew commercial and had just one modest home in Palo Alto, I corrected him. He invested most of his wealth into his foundation for educational access. Well, to each their own, Blake shrugged. But there's nothing wrong with enjoying the fruits of your labor. Life is short. What's the point of success if you can't flaunt it a little? As the conversation shifted to Madison's upcoming trip to Paris, I felt the weight of Victor's watch on my wrist. I reflected on his quiet confidence, his genuine interest in people regardless of their status, and his belief that true success is measured by the lives you uplift, not the possessions you gather. The difference between his values and those being expressed around this table was striking. My daydream was interrupted by my cousin Amber, who was enthusiastically detailing her new Mercedes. The interior is completely customized. It took 3 months to get it just right. But when you're driving through the Hamptons, it's worth it to make the right impression. Blake nodded in agreement. Image is everything in our world. The right car, the right address, the right connections. It all signals your place in the hierarchy. He turned to me with a smile that did not reach his eyes. Speaking of which, Helena, I noticed you arrived by Uber today, still taking the bus around the city, too. The table fell momentarily silent, all eyes turning toward me. The question hung in the air, its condescension unmistakable. I saw my mother's embarrassed expression, my aunt's poorly concealed pity, my uncle's smug satisfaction at his son's pointed query. But it was my father's reaction that surprised me. His attention had shifted from Blake's face to my wrist, where Victor's watch was partially visible beneath the cuff of my blouse. His eyes widened slightly, his fork pausing halfway to his mouth. He was staring at the watch with an expression of stunned recognition. Blake, misinterpreting my father's reaction as embarrassment on my behalf, pressed his advantage. I mean, there is frugality, and then there is unnecessary suffering. Public transportation in New York can be so unpredictable, not to mention the types of people you encounter. I opened my mouth to respond, but at that moment my father found his voice. Is that what I think it is? My father asked, his voice cutting through Blake's commentary. He was still staring at my wrist with an intensity that drew everyone's attention. I glanced down at Victor's watch, suddenly self-conscious. What do you mean? Your watch, he said, setting down his fork deliberately. May I see it? The table had gone silent. Blake looked confused by this unexpected interruption of his moment of triumph. I hesitated, then extended my arm across the table. My father leaned forward, examining the timepiece with growing amazement. "This is a Victor original," he said quietly. "From his limited first collection." Uncle Henry frowned. The tech entrepreneur who died last year, he made watches. Before he ventured into the tech industry, my father shared, "I'm still examining my watch." He started as a horologist, crafting a small collection of handmade timepieces before launching his first business. Only 50 pieces were ever produced. He glanced at me, his face showing a blend of surprise and newfound admiration. "How did you come to own this?" All attention shifted to me. The atmosphere at the table changed dramatically. Blake's previous teasing lingered awkwardly. "Victor gifted it to me," I replied simply. "Before he passed away, he was my mentor and an early backer of my company." My father leaned back in his chair. "Do you realize what this is worth?" I nodded. "I understand it's valuable, but that's not the reason I wear it." "That," my father remarked, now addressing everyone at the table, "is a $2 million watch, possibly even more due to its provenance, especially since Klein's passing has made his collection even more desirable." A collective gasp swept through the table. Blake's jaw literally dropped. Madison's fork clattered to the table. Aunt Pamela began to cough on her wine. "Oh, this old thing," I said with a nonchalant shrug, slightly pulling back my sleeve to showcase the watch better. "I wear it daily." Victor believed that beautiful items should be enjoyed, not tucked away. My father shook his head in disbelief. "The craftsmanship is remarkable. Each piece was completely handmade by Klein himself. The movement is based on a groundbreaking design of his own invention. Collectors have been hunting for these for years. Most are held in private collections or museums." Uncle Henry was now gazing at the watch with renewed interest. $2 million on your wrist. You ought to get that insured, Helena." "It is," I reassured him. "Victor took care of that when he presented it to me. He mentioned it was the first creation that truly mattered to him." Blake had regained enough composure to rejoin the discussion. His tone had completely changed. "I had no idea you were connected to Victor. He was a legend in the field." "He was more than just that," I said softly. "He was a friend. He had faith in what I was creating when very few others did." This was precisely what Uncle Henry inquired about, his earlier skepticism now replaced with genuine interest. "You've always been somewhat vague regarding your company." I took a sip of water, pondering how much to disclose. Victor had always recommended strategic transparency. Maybe it was time to share more. "We developed a proprietary algorithm that assists businesses in optimizing their operations through predictive analytics," I explained. "We initially focused on small businesses because they were underserved in this area, but we have grown significantly. We now collaborate with several Fortune 500 companies, 3 major healthcare systems, and the federal government." My mother blinked in astonishment. "The federal government? You never mentioned that before." "The contract was finalized last month," I replied. "We will be rolling out our platform across multiple agencies over the next year. It is our largest deal to date." "How large?" Blake asked, unable to hold back his curiosity. I met his gaze squarely. $900 million over 5 years. Another stunned silence enveloped the table. My father looked at me with open pride. Now, my mother seemed utterly perplexed. "But you still live in that tiny apartment in the city," she said, confusion clear in her voice. "And you take the bus?" I smiled. "I enjoy my apartment. It's close to our offices, and I can walk to my favorite coffee shop. As for public transport, it's efficient and better for the environment." Victor took the bus every day of his life, even after he became a billionaire. "A true Klein disciple," my father murmured, looking at me with newfound understanding. Blake was struggling to reconcile this new information with his previous view of me. So your company is successful then? I nodded. Very much so. We are currently valued at $1.88 billion after our last funding round. I maintain majority ownership. Uncle Henry choked on his drink, and Aunt Pamela's eyes widened to an almost comical extent. Madison was typing furiously on her phone, likely looking up details about my company. You're a billionaire? Blake asked, astonished. On paper, potentially, I explained. Most of my wealth is linked to the company's valuation. I take a reasonable salary and live within my means. But why keep it a secret? Amber inquired, genuinely confused. If I had that level of success, everyone would know about it. I thought of Victor and his quiet confidence, his lack of interest in impressing others. True success isn't defined by others' opinions of you, but by the impact you make and the problems you solve. Our platform has supported thousands of small businesses in surviving and thriving. It has improved healthcare delivery in underserved areas. That is more significant than the valuation. My father nodded slowly. Klein's philosophy, focus on the work, not the rewards. I always respected that about him. Blake seemed unable to grasp this new information. His entire perspective, which had placed me at the bottom of the family hierarchy, had been turned upside down in just a few minutes. But the clothes you wear, the way you live, are choices. I completed his thought. Just as your choices reflect your values, Victor taught me that we show our true selves not through our words, but through our priorities. The dinner went on, but the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. Family members who had barely acknowledged me before were now seeking reasons to engage in conversation. Questions about my company, about Victor, about my future plans came from all sides. Throughout it all, I kept my calm demeanor, neither boasting about this change nor indulging in their suddenly increased interest. As dessert was being served, Blake leaned closer, his voice low enough for only me to hear. I owe you an apology, Helena. I have been condescending and rude. I assumed that because you didn't flaunt your success, you had none to show. I observed him for a moment, looking beyond the pricey suit, and honed my charm to the insecurity lurking beneath. Success holds different meanings for various individuals, Blake. I don't judge your decisions. I would appreciate the same respect in return. He nodded, appearing somewhat humbled. The watch is truly remarkable. Klein must have held you in high regard. I gently touched the timepiece. It serves as a daily reminder of what truly matters. Not its worth, but what it signifies. Craftsmanship, integrity, and the creation of something meaningful that endures. As I spoke these words, I noticed my father watching me from across the table, a contemplative look on his face. For perhaps the first time, he was seeing me not as his little girl in need of protection or guidance, but as a woman who had carved her own path and achieved success on her own terms. In that moment of acknowledgement, I felt a shift between us, a new foundation of mutual respect beginning to form. The watch that had once been Victor's quiet companion was now narrating my story, unveiling truths I had kept concealed, not out of shame, but from a desire to be appreciated for who I am rather than what I possess. As the evening went on, I found myself thankful for its subtle presence on my wrist, a tangible link to the mentor who had influenced not only my business philosophy but my approach to life itself. As the dinner plates were cleared and coffee was poured, the conversation naturally returned to my watch and its former owner, Uncle Henry, who had been unusually silent for the last few minutes, finally expressed what many were clearly pondering. I still can't comprehend that Victor was your mentor, he remarked, stirring cream into his coffee. He was notoriously choosy about his time and investments. How did that relationship come to be? All eyes turned to me once more. Even the staff paused in their tasks, sensing that something important was happening at the table. My father leaned in a bit, clearly eager to hear the entire story himself. I met Victor at Innovate Tech, the startup where I was employed. After I graduated, I started working there. He was brought on as an advisor during a particularly tough quarter. The company was depleting its funds rapidly, and our product development had come to a standstill. I recall that company, Blake interjected. They were eventually acquired by Google, right? I nodded. For $300 million, but at that moment, we were on the brink of failure. Victor stepped in and completely changed our strategy. He had this knack for cutting through the noise and pinpointing the core value proposition. That was his brilliance. My father concurred. I once heard him speak at a conference. His clarity of thought was remarkable. He noticed that I posed different questions than the rest of the attendees. I went on. After one particularly heated meeting, he invited me to join him for coffee. We ended up chatting for 3 hours. By the end of that discussion, he had offered to mentor me. Just like that, Uncle Henry asked with skepticism. Victor made swift decisions when he saw potential, I clarified. He later told me that he saw something in me that reminded him of himself at my age, a unique perspective on problem solving. My mother, who had been unusually silent, finally chimed in. And he invested in your company when you launched it. He was my first investor, I confirmed. $500,000 based on a handshake. No formal pitch, no elaborate business plan. He said he was investing in me, not just the concept. That's not how business usually operates, Uncle Henry remarked, unable to conceal his disapproval of such unconventional methods. I smiled. Victor was anything but typical. He believed that the greatest innovations stem from trust and freedom, rather than rigid frameworks and endless paperwork. He provided me with that initial funding and encouraged me to create something meaningful. His only stipulations were that I retain control of the company and that I allocate a portion of any profits to assist others. The foundation you set up last year, my father remarked, nodding in understanding. The one aimed at tech education in underprivileged communities. That was part of your deal with Clean. Yes, I replied, taken aback that he was aware of it, although I would have pursued it regardless. Victor taught me that success brings responsibility. Madison, who had been browsing on her phone during our conversation, looked up with astonished eyes. According to Forbes, Klein Dynamics is expected to hit a valuation of $3 billion by the next quarter. There are whispers of an IPO, she gazed at me. You named your company after him. It felt fitting, I stated simply. His philosophy underpins everything we do. But why hold on to all of this? So, Private Aunt Pamela inquired, vaguely gesturing towards my simple clothing. You could be residing in a penthouse, driving luxury cars, enjoying the finest things in life. I pondered how to convey a mindset so different from the one prevailing at this table. When Victor gifted me this watch, he shared something I will always remember. He said, the moment you feel the need to prove your worth to others is the moment you have forgotten what you are truly worth. I do not need to showcase my success to affirm it. My father nodded slowly, a newfound appreciation in his gaze. Clean always recognized that true power lies in understanding your value without seeking external validation. That's why he earned respect even from his rivals. Exactly. I concurred. And he embodied that philosophy daily. The most significant lessons he imparted to me had nothing to do with business tactics or technology. They revolved around integrity, purpose, and the responsibility that accompanies success. Blake, who had been unusually quiet, finally chimed in. So the watch must hold immense sentimental value beyond its monetary worth. It is invaluable to me, I affirmed. Victor wore it while establishing $3 billion companies. He mentioned it kept him grounded, reminding him of the craftsmanship and patience needed to create something of enduring value. And now you wear it while you build your own empire, my father noted with a slight smile. I shook my head. Not an empire, but a solution. Our platform enables businesses to operate more efficiently, which helps save jobs, cut down on waste, and enhance working conditions. The valuation is merely a byproduct, not the objective. Uncle Henry appeared doubtful, yet my father was nodding with increasing comprehension. I could sense a change in the way he regarded me. A newfound respect, mixed with what might have been regret for not recognizing this aspect of me earlier. "The federal contract you mentioned," he remarked, "was the one announced last month aimed at modernizing agency operations and minimizing governmental waste." "Yes," I affirmed. "We outperformed several major tech companies for the bid. Our solution is projected to save taxpayers around $12 billion over a decade while enhancing service delivery." "That was your company," Uncle Henry exclaimed. "It was all over the financial news." "They never mentioned your name." "I prefer to maintain a low profile," I explained. "Our work speaks for itself." "But surely now, with this level of success, you will elevate your lifestyle." Aunt Pamela insisted, still seemingly unable to grasp my choices. "Perhaps a nicer apartment at the very least." I smiled politely. "I enjoy where I live. It is convenient and has everything I need." Victor resided in the same modest house for 30 years, even as his net worth soared to billions. He taught me that excessive consumption rarely correlates with greater happiness. "So, you just work all the time?" Madison inquired, her tone implying she found the idea disheartening. "I work on things that are important to me," I clarified. "But I also travel extensively, volunteer, and spend time with friends who appreciate me for who I am, not what I possess." "My life is very fulfilling. And the foundation?" my father asked. "Tell us more about that." I felt a genuine smile spread across my face. This was something I was truly proud of. The Klein Foundation for Technological Equity. We offer extensive technology education and mentorship to students from underprivileged communities, along with full scholarships, necessary equipment, internships, and continuous support. Our initial group of 50 students is currently halfway through the program. They are remarkable. 50 students, Uncle Henry remarked. "That seems small for someone of your resources." "We're just beginning," I clarified. "The program is rigorous and tailored to each individual. We aim to fine-tune our methods before scaling up, but our vision for the next decade is to impact 10,000 students each year nationwide. 10,000 lives transformed." My father reflected. "That represents a considerable legacy, far more meaningful than any material possession." I concurred. Victor recognized that his true pride lay not in the businesses he established, but in the individuals he nurtured and the opportunities he provided. As our coffee came to an end and the family started to head towards the library for after-dinner drinks, I sensed a noticeable shift in how they interacted with me. There was a new nuance in their behavior, a reevaluation of my role within the family structure. It was precisely what I had always wished to avoid, being appreciated for my wealth rather than my character. Blake approached me as we strolled down the hallway adorned with family portraits. "I feel like I need to completely rethink everything I believed about you," he confessed. "All this time I was feeling sorry for you, thinking you couldn't afford the lifestyle the rest of us have. And it turns out you could buy and sell most of us multiple times over." I paused and turned to face him squarely. "That is exactly why I refrained from discussing my company's worth or my personal finances, Blake. I do not wish to be treated differently because of my financial status. It is the least fascinating aspect of who I am." He appeared genuinely confused. "But isn't that what we all desire? Recognition of our success, acknowledgement of our accomplishments." "I receive all the recognition I need from witnessing our platform make a positive impact on the businesses that utilize it," I replied. Observing our foundation students flourish, and knowing that Victor would be proud of what I've created, Blake looked at my watch and then back at me. "I believe I have much to learn from you, Helena." For the first time that night, his words felt entirely genuine. The family had moved to the library, a room adorned with wood paneling, towering bookshelves, leather chairs, and a well-stocked bar. Conversations had broken into smaller clusters, and I noticed I was now being included in discussions that would have previously left me out. Uncle Henry suddenly wanted to hear my views on market trends. Aunt Pamela was eager to introduce me to her friend who managed a charitable foundation. Even Justin, who had hardly acknowledged me at past gatherings, was inquiring about possible investment opportunities. I took a glass of whiskey from the bar and found a quiet spot, needing a moment to digest the evening's changes. The revelation of my success had shifted the family dynamics in ways that both amused and unsettled me. I was still the same person I had been when I arrived by Uber hours ago, yet I was now being treated in a completely different manner. "Quite a performance," my father remarked, appearing next to me with his own drink. "Mind if I join you?" I motioned to the empty chair beside me. "Please do." He sat down, taking a thoughtful sip of his scotch. "You know, I always admired your wish for privacy and your independence, but I had no idea you were keeping so much under wraps. Would it have changed anything if you had known?" I inquired. He pondered this for a moment. "I have always been proud of you, Helena, but I might have been able to shield you from some of the family's condescension more effectively." "I can manage condescension," I reassured him. "It's the abrupt change in treatment now that they are aware of the company valuation that troubles me more." My father nodded, instantly grasping the burden of wealth. People often focus on the money rather than the individual. This is why I've always been wary of new friends who show up after business deals are made public. Victor faced a similar issue. I mentioned this to him once, and he shared that he could count on one hand the number of people who genuinely understood him, not just his financial status. "He seems like an incredible mentor." My father pondered over his drink. "I regret not having taken the time to know him better. We would occasionally cross paths at conferences, but we never engaged in a meaningful conversation." "You would have appreciated him," I remarked. "He was brilliant yet humble, completely genuine, just like his protégé," my father noted with a slight smile. "You know, as I watched you tonight, I saw so much of my younger self in you. The drive to create something significant, to be evaluated based on merit rather than background. This caught me off guard." My father always appeared at ease with his wealth and the privileges it brought. "Really? But you seem to embrace all of this." I gestured around at the lavish room. He laughed. "Your mother embraces it. I merely tolerate it because it brings her joy. But between us, I would be perfectly happy in a space a quarter of this size." He leaned in closer. "Why do you think I spend so much time at the office or the fishing cabin in Vermont?" "All of this," he waved his hand. "It was never my motivation." "I had no clue," I confessed. "It seems we share that trait, the ability to keep our true selves somewhat concealed." He took another sip of his drink. "Although perhaps we have both excelled at it. I should have recognized what you were building. I should have acknowledged your accomplishments sooner." "You noticed enough," I reassured him. "You reviewed those quarterly filings, it seems." He smiled. "Professional curiosity at first, then genuine admiration as I realized what you were achieving, but I respected your privacy and your wish to succeed on your own terms. I didn't want to intrude." "I truly appreciated that," I said sincerely. "It meant everything to me to establish this on my own terms." My father's demeanor turned serious. "The watch. It truly was Klein's personal timepiece." I nodded, extending my wrist so he could see it again in the warm glow of the library. "He gifted it to me on my 17th birthday, saying it had been with him through everything, and now it should be with me." My father examined it with expert eyes, noting the extraordinary craftsmanship. I had heard whispers about his collection, but few pieces have ever been photographed or documented. Most were given to close friends or family, never sold. I told him that he made this one himself from scratch, spending 2 years perfecting the movement while launching his first tech company. He mentioned that it taught him patience and precision, values that have served him well. Clearly, my father looked from the watch to me, and now they serve you. Our conversation was interrupted when Blake approached, his demeanor noticeably more humble than earlier in the evening. "Excuse me, Uncle Thomas." May I borrow Helena for a moment? My father glanced at me. I nodded, and he stood. Of course, I should check on your mother anyway. She is probably already planning how to redecorate your childhood bedroom now that she knows you can afford priceless art. He winked at me before walking away. Blake took the empty seat, his usual confidence diminished. I wanted to properly apologize, Helena. My behavior tonight, and honestly, at every family gathering for years has been inexcusable. I studied him, trying to gauge his sincerity. Apology accepted. But I am curious about what exactly you are apologizing for. He seemed taken aback for treating you as if you were less successful, less accomplished than me, for the comments about the bus, your lifestyle choices, all of it. And if my company was worth $10,000 instead of nearly $2 billion, would you still be apologizing? I asked mildly. Blake had the grace to look embarrassed. That is a fair question. It is the only question that matters, I pointed out, because if you are only sorry because you discovered I am wealthier than you imagined, then you have missed the entire point. He paused for a moment, truly contemplating my words. You're right, he eventually confessed. I've been evaluating success and people using all the wrong criteria. It's how I was brought up, but that's no justification. It's never too late to reassess your values, I told him, my voice softening. Victor was 40 when he had his revelation about wealth and status. It completely changed his outlook on life and business. I'd love to learn more about him sometime, Blake remarked, about his philosophy. If you're open to sharing, I'd appreciate it. I said, somewhat taken aback by his sincere interest. As Blake took his leave, my mother came over, looking a bit flustered. Helena, sweetheart, I feel truly awful about all the little remarks I've made over the years regarding your apartment, your clothing, your lifestyle choices. She sat down next to me, holding my hands. If I had known about your success. Mom, I gently interrupted. That's precisely why I didn't tell you. I wanted you to embrace my choices for what they are, not because they carried a certain value. She appeared puzzled. But surely you realize that we only want what's best for you. To see you living below your means when you could have everything you desire. This is what I want, I reassured her. A meaningful business that addresses real issues. A foundation that provides opportunities for deserving students. A life centered on purpose rather than material possessions. But you could have both, she argued. Purpose and beautiful things. I touched Victor's watch. I have both. This is the most precious item I own, and I value it not for its market price, but for what it signifies. The same goes for my company, my foundation, and my relationships. My mother sighed, clearly still having difficulty grasping it. Well, at the very least, you must allow me to help you find a nicer apartment, something that suits your status. I couldn't help but chuckle. Some things remain constant. I love you, Mom, just the way you are, even when you attempt to redesign my life. She gave a reluctant smile. And I love you even when you stubbornly turn down perfectly fine Chanel dresses. As the evening came to a close, I found myself having more authentic conversations than I had at any prior family gathering. Some relatives were clearly still coming to terms with the news of my success, adjusting how they viewed me. Others appeared to be reevaluating their own ideas of what achievement means. And a few, like my father, were connecting with me on a deeper level, looking past both my intentional modesty and the company valuation to see the person I had become. When it was time to leave, I requested another Uber, turning down offers from several relatives to drive me to the city. My father accompanied me to the door while we waited for the car to arrive. You have given them all something to ponder tonight, he remarked. Myself included. That was never my aim, I replied. I simply wanted to be seen as a person, not a financial figure, whether positive or negative. He nodded thoughtfully. Victor Klein's most significant legacy may not be his businesses or even his watches, but the lessons he imparted about the true essence of success. He placed a hand on my shoulder. I would love to see your office sometime, meet your team, and learn more about what you are creating. I would appreciate that, I said, genuinely happy with the idea. How about next week? I could give you a tour and introduce you to everyone. It's a plan, he agreed as my Uber arrived. And Helena, keep wearing that watch. It is exactly where it should be. As I settled into the back seat of the car, I looked down at Victor's timepiece, reflecting on how objects, like people, hold many layers. To most of my family, the watch had changed my status from a struggling entrepreneur to a serious contender in an instant of acknowledgement. To me, it has always been a link to a mentor who taught me that the true measure of success lies not in what you gather, but in what you give back. 3 weeks after that enlightening family dinner, I found myself in my office with a view of Madison Avenue. The office was sleek yet simple, featuring glass walls, clean lines, and practical furniture. There were no pricey artworks on display, just enlarged photos of our team collaborating with clients, serving as visual reminders of the real individuals affected by our technology. My father's visit had exceeded my expectations. He arrived early, took a comprehensive tour, met my executive team, and posed insightful questions about our technology and business model. I felt a sense of pride as I watched him interact with our developers, genuinely interested in their work and vision. By the end of the day, he was swapping contact details with our CTO, planning to connect him with potential partners. You've created something extraordinary here, he told me as we gazed out over the city from our rooftop deck. Not just the technology or the business, but the culture. These people are passionate about what they do. I responded that this was always the aim, to build something significant, something that truly matters. Now, as I went over the final plans for our foundation's new headquarters, I thought about how much had transformed since that dinner. My daily routine remained mostly unchanged, but my relationships with my family had evolved. My father and I now chatted several times a week, discussing business strategies, foundation projects, and occasionally diving into the nuances of watch collecting, a shared interest we had uncovered. My mother had finally come to terms with the fact that I wouldn't be moving into a penthouse anytime soon, although she had managed to sneak a few designer items into my wardrobe for special occasions. The most unexpected change was in my relationship with Blake. True to his promise, he reached out to delve deeper into Victor's philosophy. We met for coffee several times, and I was impressed by his sincere wish to rethink his priorities. He even started volunteering with a local youth coding program, uncovering a knack for teaching that surprised us both. The overall family dynamic had also evolved. At a cousin's birthday party the weekend before, I noticed a shift away from a focus on material possessions towards more meaningful conversations. Whether this change would endure was uncertain, but it was a hopeful beginning. My assistant lightly knocked on my door, breaking my train of thought. Your 2 o'clock is here. The high school student you mentioned. Send her in, I replied, standing to welcome my guest. Zoe entered my office with a hint of nervousness, a 16-year-old with bright eyes and a determined posture. She had applied to our foundation's mentorship program with an impressive proposal on using data analytics to tackle food insecurity in urban areas. Miss Hayes, she said, formally extending her hand. Thank you so much for meeting with me. Please, call me Helena, I corrected her, gently motioning for her to sit down. I was really impressed by your application, Zoe. Your method of mapping food deserts using various data points was quite innovative. She visibly brightened at the compliment. My family depends on food assistance programs, so I understand how difficult access can be. I want to develop solutions, not just highlight issues. As she shared her ideas, I was moved by her enthusiasm and clear sense of purpose. She reminded me of myself at her age, although she faced economic challenges I had never encountered. This was precisely the type of student Victor aimed to support, someone with the vision and determination to effect real change. How would you feel about being the first participant in our new direct mentorship program? I asked after she concluded her presentation. You would collaborate directly with our data science team for one afternoon each week, working on your project with expert guidance. There is a stipend available. Naturally, her eyes widened. Are you serious? That would change everything for me. Completely serious, I confirmed. Your idea has genuine potential. With the right support and resources, it could assist thousands of families. As we went over the details, I was aware of Victor's watch on my wrist, a physical reminder of the responsibility that comes with success. By helping Zoe develop her project, I was honoring his legacy in the most significant way possible by creating opportunities for the next generation of problem solvers. After Zoe left, practically floating with excitement, I called my father to share the news about the new mentorship initiative. He listened attentively, then surprised me with his response. I would like to contribute to the foundation, he said. Not just financially, though that too if necessary, but with my time. I have experience that could be valuable to these young entrepreneurs. That would be fantastic, I told him, genuinely touched by the offer. The students would gain immensely from your business expertise. And I believe I would gain from their fresh perspectives, he replied. Your dinner revelation did more than just astonish the family, Helena. It prompted me to reassess how I measure success in myself and in others. I want to be part of creating something that endures beyond balance sheets and property portfolios. As we wrapped up plans for his involvement, I reflected on how one evening, one moment of truth, had created ripples that continued to spread outward. My choice to live by Victor's philosophy had impacted not only my own life but increasingly the lives of those around me. Later that evening, as I took the subway home, I observed the diverse faces of my fellow passengers. A construction worker still dressed in his work clothes, a nurse in scrubs, students carrying backpacks, and a woman in a business suit similar to mine. Each person has their own story and their own definition of what is important. Victor navigated the world this way, focusing on people instead of positions, valuing substance over material possessions. That night in my apartment, I removed the watch and held it in my hand, feeling its weight and significance. It had transformed into something much more than just a timepiece for me. It served as a compass for my decisions and priorities, reminding me that true wealth is found not in what you own, but in what you give back, not in how others see you, but in how you embody your values. The watch would never be displayed in a museum or locked away in a safe. It would keep me company through board meetings and foundation events, family dinners, and quiet evenings. It would mark the hours of my life just as it had marked Victor's, witnessing the creation of something meaningful and enduring. As I got ready for bed, my phone buzzed with a message from Blake. He had just completed his first solo teaching session at the coding program and was thrilled by the experience. I think I finally grasped what Victor meant about valuing impact over image, he wrote. Thank you for showing me a different way to define success. I smiled as I typed my reply, reflecting on how authentic connections and genuine purpose are the true indicators of a life well lived. The watch had caught my father's attention at that pivotal dinner. But what truly mattered was the philosophy it embodied. The realization that our value is not defined by our wealth, but by our actions and their effects on others. Have you ever experienced a moment when something you owned revealed more about you than you expected? Or a time when others' perceptions of you shifted dramatically due to new insights? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey towards genuine success struck a chord with you, I would appreciate it if you could like this video and subscribe to my channel for more tales about discovering real value in a world fixated on appearances. Keep in mind that the most valuable possessions we have are not defined by their monetary worth, but by the significance they carry in our hearts. Thank you for tuning in, and until we meet again, may you always recognize your true worth beyond any figure in your bank account.